Tangle the Lemur and Whisper the Wolf are two of the most smash hit characters from this franchise that we've seen within the past decade. As such, they've managed to break the one curse that seemingly no prior comic run cast member has been able to do so in a meaningful way: break into the mainstream. With them finally getting voices a la Ashlyn Madden and Anaris Quinones for Tangle and Whisper respectively, in addition to their CrossWorlds release today, I figured it was high time to do a bit of a retrospective on the two to see if we can pinpoint where exactly it was that they broke into the limelight. Without further ado, here are the recap, breakdown, and history of everything Tangle and Whisper. Introduced for the first time back in IDW Sonic the Hedgehog issue number 4, Tangle the Lemur was born and raised in Spiral Village. It's a quaint little town where not much happens, much to the dismay of our energetic primate, but even with that, she was almost always able to find something to do and somewhere to go. Her conception stemmed from IDW Publishing itself wanting a female Sonic character that would be able to accompany the blue guy on adventures consistently, since at the time, Sonic's world was still reeling everything back in from the plot of Sonic Forces, where of course Dr. Eggman wreaked havoc with the Phantom Ruby from that game. Tangle was meant to serve as the stand-in for some of the already established female characters of the cast that were busy with other duties at the time and couldn't accompany Sonic on his journeys, such as Amy for the restoration, Cream presumably being hidden with her mother, Rouge doing who knows what, and Blaze obviously presiding over the Soul Dimension. Insert our ring-tailed friend. She, in a bottle, is essentially Sonic the Hedgehog himself, just without all the combat experience of fighting for justice. At least until her town was being ransacked by Eggman robots early on in the series, where it's time for her to either put up or shut up. The two heroes hit it off pretty well, and Tangle is seemingly a fan of the blue blur, but manages to keep a cool, level head while they deal with the threats at large, and the chemistry that these two have makes it seem like they've been fighting together for ages. Combo attacks, banter, and having a game of who can thrash robots the best are all on display here. Having a character like Tangle be one of our first glimpses into some of the personalities we'd be seeing in this upcoming comic run for a new generation was 1000% the right call from a marketing standpoint in my eyes. Such an easygoing, fun new cast member to ease new readers in with a personality that they've probably seen before. No edge, no trifling backstory, or a reason why they hate the world. Just a girl that loves adventure. Or, well, the prospect of adventure, since she hasn't been anywhere until after she's introduced. It goes to show that the team of writers are finally back to being able to have fun with conjuring up silly characters that can always be expanded upon later, and Tangle's demeanor about the world shows so much. Throughout the serialization of the IDW Sonic comics, Tangle would fulfill her conceptual duty of being the de facto tag-along team member for not only Sonic, but honestly much of our established cast as well, like Tails and Amy on smaller scale adventures or side plots. In fact, I can't be sure if it's due to what the plans were for her already or sheer coincidence of high approval ratings, but if this chart from a whopping 5 years ago is still to be believed today in 2026, Tangle the Lemur sits at the number 6 spot for most comic appearances, even beating out the likes of veterans like Rouge, Shadow, and Knuckles. Many a story would often see Tangle as the enabler or one to spring into action of the respective group she's in. This would sometimes result in her and Sonic once again bouncing off of one another, like in the Battle for Egg City arc, and keeping fellow members on their toes, or just straight up being the one to take the initiative if the Hedgehog happens to not be around, like in a few of the smaller stories that pop up in between those major arcs. IDW's most famous arc, the Metal Virus Saga, sees this exactly in full effect. As a result of attempting to save as many people in her hometown as possible, namely her best friend Jewel the Beetle, Tangle ends up infected and admits to Sonic that her insect friend caught her off guard after the lemur sprung into the scene with a one-track mind. Although she is able to admit to Sonic that she's scared, that doesn't distract her from the notion that she still has a part to play in stopping as much destruction as possible. With as much of a smile that can be conjured up and keeping a cheery attitude, she and Sonic create one last line of defense that can be held up at Spiral Village so the rest of the survivors can escape, upon which being completed, the two say their temporary goodbyes as Sonic proceeds on to the next point of the story alone. I truly believe that this was possibly the single most defining moment for Tangle. A character that just has the it factor is hard to come by in media, but the lemur got it, I can't even lie to y'all. When Tangle was first revealed in the comics, it had been just over a decade since we'd last gotten a character that was fun to have around and felt as though they had a meaningful place within the cast. And before her, Chip was that previous person, depending on who you ask, of course. Comic character voices are also subjective for the most part, But with the recent unveiling of Ashlyn Madden as the voice of Tangle the Lemur thanks to the Chaotic Case Files podcast, this is perhaps an almost one-to-one idea of what I envisioned her voice to be.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Charmy. Way to think on your feet. Wings.
High energy, raring to go, but still able to flex her vocal abilities to deliver on those more serious moments whenever some exposition is needed. It's no surprise given Madden's previous works and things like her time as Freedom Planet's 2 Nira.
Looks like the Magister's mission will have to wait. Let's get this over with. I have business to attend to.
Or Shin Megami Tensei 5's Miyazu.
We went back together. Thank you for helping my brother. Oh, that reminds me. Are you free after school today?
Where the chops required were honestly along the lines of what you more expect from a certain other character that we'll be going over in just a sec. All in all, Ashlyn Madden's done a wonderful job at bringing this green-tailed bundle of energy to life, and I hope that her voice appearances aren't just relegated to side projects. I'm looking at you, CrossWorlds. But how can you have just one new character and not compliment them? A partner or equal that they're able to confide in and tell everything about their past, and bounce off of one another so well it's like a match made in heaven. The peanut butter to your jelly, one might say. The cookies to your cream. The protection of today's sponsor to your Nintendo Switch 2. My friends at JSOL have graced us with yet another partnership opportunity, so I'm here to tell you about their split everyday case, Travel Mode. If you took the plunge and got a Nintendo Switch 2 and or a busybody like me, you know that putting a $500 console at risk just so you can play a little gaming game on the go is more heart-pounding than Sonic Racing CrossWorlds' Legend competition. Luckily, that can all be said with JSOL's Travel Edition of their split everyday case. A dock-compatible, lightweight yet durable, and ergonomic shell for your precious new Nintendo baby. This has quickly become my new favorite case design by JSOL for the simple fact that it comes with a new adjustable kickstand that can help save the integrity of my Switch 2's built-in kickstand, because I really do a lot of multiplayer and mobile gaming with my homies. Not to mention that the back and front plates, in addition to the Joy-Con 2 grips provided, all have this sensation of quality and protection that I've yet to find anywhere else. It's slim enough to fit with my other JSOL products as well. So if you're looking for some well-trusted peripherals for your Nintendo Switch 2 or even other handheld consoles, visit JSOL and input code JIGGYX3 at checkout for a generous discount, or just visit the link down in the description as well. Thanks to JSOL for sponsoring the video, and now, let's see how Whisper the Wolf set the Sonic community ablaze. Similar to Tangle, there is one panel that always pops into my head whenever I think about just how raw this character is. But before that, we must look throughout the comic to get a bit of context to see exactly how we got to that point in the story in the first place, as well as the wolf's defining moments that came beforehand. Introduced in IDW Sonic the Hedgehog issue number 8, we're taking along on a run through an Eggman base via the Blue Blur, who is zooming past traps, badniks, and more on his way to collect data from one of the Doctor's computers. He runs into Silver, who's at the base doing the same thing, attempting to offer assistance, but there is seemingly a third individual present at this location as well. Said individual helps the two on a couple of occasions, until all three finally come into contact with one another at a locked junction. The mysterious woman introduces herself in a whisper as Whisper the Wolf, a mercenary that acted as the guardian angel of the Eggman War who helped turn the tide of several battles. She speaks in the manner she does, and while no one is quite sure why yet, it gives her a stark comparison to even the more reserved members of the cast like Shadow and Knuckles. After introductions are made, our three heroes finally find what it is they're looking for, but not without a fight as we see everything that Whisper has to offer in terms of combat capabilities and prowess. The entire time leading up until now, the Merc is shown to be cool, calm, and calculated, navigating the battlefield like the pro that Silver exclaimed her to be. But there's something off in the distance that'll show us an early peek at what lies beneath the surface for the cream-colored wolf. Whisper gets, at least contrary to how she's shown to be thus far, strangely upset upon seeing Eggman's insignia on the computer. Immediately, she wants to smash the device until Sonic convinces her to do it after the information they need is obtained, but it's increasingly interesting to see a subversion of this character type appear so soon after their introduction. You'd imagine that most of the anthropomorphic characters in this world have a serious disdain for Eggman, particularly after the events of Sonic Forces. However, our bushy-tailed sniper wears an expression that tells us there is more of a story behind that insignia for her than we ever imagined. This would ultimately go unsolved for several issues after the fact, but a layered character like Whisper is a much adored addition after the simplistic yet very necessary introduction of Tangle and her personality. These two also follow the common philosophy that comes with duos in this series. One who is by the books when it comes to peppiness or a brighter persona, and the other that should be looked at with a bit more nuance. Until we get the backstory of Whisper the Wolf, you see these little growth successes that she has in her interactions with the rest of the cast, and an example of this comes not long after her debut in the annual for IDW Sonic. She goes out of her way to visit Tangle's village so that the lemur can show the wolf around and become more acquainted with the place. Some shenanigans go on when it comes to them and the Babylon Rogues, but you can see how Whispers come to trust Tangle a lot more and vice versa, both of whom begin to exhibit the synergy that Sonic and Tangle were exuding all the way back in issue number 4. These two grow so close together, in fact, that the Lone Warrior and the Ecstatic Adventurer in training get their own dedicated miniseries together. Whisper, during this miniseries, finally lets all her walls down and tells Tangle of how she came to gain this newfound personality due to a traumatic incident in her past involving the loss of several people closest to her. It's a tale as old as time within the Sonic series, as we've seen it before in prior storylines. However, I believe what the writing team was attempting to do and would later finally deliver on is a concept that sometimes there are no alternatives to dealing with the type of grief that Whisper has been experiencing. Her stance as one of the more human-adjacent characters is really solidified in a lot of the issues that she shows up in, as even though we can view those aforementioned growth periods, there are still moments where she almost regresses into her shell and does a complete 180. The wolf's unique way of speaking via hushed tones, the precision that she handles her missions with, and the confidence in which she carries herself in most of the story appearances she makes all come to a head as we return back to why I called her one of the most raw characters in Sonic media. This Metal Virus panel. Tangle is recently infected, the resistance is running out of time, and all Whisper can do is scream her heart out. For me, this had more shock value than Shadow getting infected, Vanilla getting caught, even more than Vector and Charmy being taken out. Maybe it's because we've seen these characters struggle before, or perhaps it's nothing more than this is the first time we've actively seen Whisper let everything out as she completely loses her composure. As the story goes on, we of course get to see more of the wolf, her backstory and how she's navigating life now that she once again has people she can truly trust, like Tangle and Silver. She still whispers, unironically, but it doesn't feel as melancholic as before. Her voice feels resolute and focused, a facet that her official voice actor, Anais Quiñones, captures extremely well.
Well, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
I will say it's difficult to envision a character that solely whispers as a form of speech, since we typically only see the more extreme sides of the spectrum. A character that's loud and talks a lot, or a character that's completely silent. So the fact that Anais was able to deliver a performance on what Whisper subconsciously sounded like in my head is phenomenal to see. Or hear, rather. Honestly, the announcement / reveal of Whisper's voice high-key got me excited since Anais voices quite a number of characters from some of my recent favorite animated shows. Pretty please, I Don't Want to Be a Magical Girl's main character, Aika.
Normal girl of average talent living an unspectacular life. I just moved to this quiet little town where nothing ever happens.
Echidna from ReZero.
But actually, you happen to be correct. The sanctuary is just outside of the ruins.
And Rika from JJK.
Death is not out of you!
I mentioned all of those to really hammer home the absolute fact that Whisper is directly in Anais's wheelhouse. But while this is all nice, we have to get back to the main topic. Do Whisper and Tangle deserve their spot in the limelight? Tangle the Lemur and Whisper the Wolf are two of the most smash hit characters from this franchise that we've seen within the past decade. As such, they've managed to break the one curse that seemingly no prior comic run cast member has been able to do so in a meaningful way: break into the mainstream. In addition to that, their conception as Sonic the Hedgehog characters couldn't have come at a better time for this franchise. I'm not sure if you all remember, but there was most definitely a point in time where the IDW comics were looked at as the saving grace for the franchise, during a period where the video games themselves were less than stellar. It was fresh, new, canon cast members like both Whisper and Tangle that got us going, along with those high-octane stories that we were sorely missing from the games at the time. The Battle for Angel Island, Metal Virus Saga, and a whole slew of one-shots that kept interest in this franchise afloat. among other things, but once again staying on topic. Most, if not all of, just so happened to include the publication duo somewhere in the mix as well. Honestly, it was just a matter of time before these two, more than anyone else currently in IDW, sans maybe Surge and Kit, were implemented into the games. I mean, they're already part of the canon timeline anyway, as IDW is considered as such, so it was less of an if and more of a when. Technically, the Archie characters were the first to come to the canon as we all know it via Sonic Spinball. Sure, but when it comes down to it, Tangle the Lemur and Whisper the Wolf defeated all the odds and curses stacked against comic book characters in the Sonic universe. One was already mentioned in Sonic Frontiers, and they're both making their first playable debut in a massive, multiplayer and multi-console Sonic title, with the perspective for even more appearances on the horizon. If you know, you know. These two have been casted out of the shadows and deservedly so. So to them, I say, welcome home, Tangle and Whisper.